I'm Pete McCall, and welcome to episode 103 of All About Fitness. Before I get into the introduction for this episode's guest, I want to take a little bit of time out to say thanks to Mike in DC. And Mike, I really appreciate those kind words, and I'm glad you're enjoying the podcast. And any more feedback you have, dude, please send it my way. And keep up those Instagram posts, man. I really enjoy that. And I'd like to give a big shout out to Vance Hines. Keep on working, brother. It's fun to watch your progress, and I'm rooting for you. If you're a fan of All About Fitness, if you're enjoying this podcast, the only request I have from you is that you take a moment to give it a rating. We all know how this thing works, right? The more ratings a podcast receive, the higher up it goes in the search engine. And if you're getting a lot out of All About Fitness, then do me a favor and share it with other people by just taking a moment out of your day to give it a rating. Now, on to this episode's guest. What I'm trying to do with All About Fitness is I'm trying to string together interviews of experts or individuals from different aspects of the same field. So a couple months ago, I focused on researchers. I've had a little string where I did celebrity personal trainers. Right now, I'm kind of doing a twofer. One, I'm focusing on people that are recognized as fitness influencers on Instagram. I'm also been focused on body positivity. If you notice, I had Molly Galbraith on a couple episodes ago. She helped create the online community of Girls Gone Strong. Recently I had Maurice Summers, a personal trainer who's really trying to redefine what fitness means. And that brings me to this episode's guest. Louise Green is the author of the book Big Fit Girl, Embrace the Body You Have. She's done a TEDx talk about her experience being a plus-sized fitness advocate, and I'll have a link to that down in the show notes below. On today's episode, Louise and I talk about what fitness means. Do you really need to have a certain type of body to enjoy exercise? If you've been listening to All About Fitness, then you know my message is no. It doesn't matter what you look like. What matters is that you have the will and the motivation and the desire just to get up and be active. You don't even need to exercise in the gym. You don't even need to exercise. Just get up, be active, move. Find the movement that you enjoy. Find what you like doing. If it's walking, swimming, cleaning your house, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you move, that you use the body that you have. And it was really fun having this conversation with Louise. I watched her TED Talk. I read a little bit about her book, and it's just somebody who I really wanted to have on the podcast because of the message that she's sharing with others. She talks about the plus size. The fitness industry does not cater to people like her. That is one thing. I've pointed out a couple areas where fitness needs to get better. That's one area where we need to improve significantly. We need to move away from this mindset of you need to have a certain type of body to be fit. What matters is that you have the energy, you have the capacity, you have the desire. Louise is somebody who went from being a former talent agent. Her job was all about appearance. And now she's involved in being an internationally recognized expert of promoting and advocating for plus-size fitness. After a brief word from the sponsor of All About Fitness, my conversation with Louise Green, the author of Big Fit Girl, Embrace the Body You Have, and an international advocate for plus-size fitness. What is part bench, part balance trainer, part stability ball, part jump box, and all results? The Terra by Vicor Fitness, specially designed to help enhance balance, strength, agility, and metabolic conditioning. The Terra is quickly becoming the go-to piece of workout equipment used by fitness professionals around the world. Whether you're training to earn that 8-figure contract or just trying to get in better shape, the Terra will help you achieve results you never thought possible. Terra by Vicor Fitness, the shape of things to come. Go to www.vicorefitness.com and use code AAF, that's All About Fitness, AAF, to save 20% on the purchase of a Terra. I'm Pete McCall with All About Fitness, here today with Louise Green from Canada. Louise, can you give us a little bit of information about what you do and your role in the fitness industry?
Sure. I'm a personal trainer, and for the last 10 years, I've been running a business in Vancouver called Body Exchange, which is boot camps and adventure company specifically for plus size women. And now I'm running online programs that are now hitting plus size women around the globe. And I recently wrote a book called Big Fit Girl. So I'm very dedicated to making fitness accessible for all shapes and sizes.
Well, and I think that's an important thing, Louise. And that's where, and actually I got I found your information because you're recognized as a fitness influencer on Instagram. So let's talk about that for a second. What was it like to find out that other media outlets are recognizing you as a fitness influencer?
I think it's obviously I was very proud to have that kind of recognition because I work hard on getting a message out to people that resonates with them to help them get moving and realize that fitness can be for everybody. So it's cool to have that recognition that these big media outlets are noticing that work.
And do you think that's important because, we haven't spoken before, and this is our first time talking, and one of the things that I really like, going through your website and going through your Instagram feed is the fact that you are focused on kind of not your average fitness consumer. And in that regard, what do you think fitness gets wrong? What do you think is, and that's a very long and loaded question, but it's like, what do you think fitness is missing in terms of some of its marketing and how it presents itself to the outside world?
Well, I think that, a large part of society kind of gets down on people that don't exercise and who are of a certain size. I see it happening in tons of commentary in media pieces that support larger people to exercise. And so we kind of have this bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation where people feel shamed when they enter fitness spaces. But the biggest piece that I think is getting wrong in how we present fitness is the representation as to how we invite people into movement. And that is typically usually Caucasian people in their 20s, very lean, ripped, type of visual imagery that we are basically showing an aspiration instead of showing the person who they currently are, so that they can identify with that imagery and then think to themselves, there's a person that looks like me doing that. Perhaps I possibly can. There's so many barriers for bigger people to go into fitness culture. So when they're hit constantly with this imagery that doesn't represent them, it's very uninviting.
And how many people have you heard from who are inspired by you posting images? Because one of the things we know about behavior change is that vicarious experiences play a key role. So if people see somebody else like them that they can identify with visually, it makes it easier to take that step to doing something. So have you heard that from people that follow your social media? Do they look at you as a source of inspiration?
I literally get emails or direct messages every day from people that say that the visual representation, the messaging that I show through the work that I do has inspired them to start moving, and more on a proper like research level position. If you look at the campaign "This Girl Can" that was created by Sport England, the statistics around how many more people started to move once that campaign came out. And I don't know if you list any reference material after these interviews, but I can certainly send you the link. Just by showing diversity in age and size and ethnicity brought about an extreme increase in physical activity amongst people in the UK.
And I would definitely like to do that and definitely like to link to that. Because there's on that note, there's been a lot of research showing that actually people who are a little bit bigger, a little bit, not necessarily overweight, but a little bit, maybe a few pounds off the ideal, actually have lower mortality and live longer than people that might be at ideal weight or underweight. Have you seen any of that research as well?
I've seen all different kinds of research. You know, whenever I see research that comes out that supports, people living in a larger body, there's always people that'll slap in front of your face something that supports the exact opposite. So I think with research, there's always two sides to the story. But I definitely have heard what you're speaking of.
Well, and but I love that. I mean, that's actually the absolute right thing. I mean, research can give us a snapshot of what's happening at a moment in time with a certain set of variables, but it certainly isn't a holy grail to say this is the only way it's going to happen. But one of the reasons why I reference that is getting over this notion that fitness is about having some sort of, achieving some sort of look. How do you define, in your work as, with your brand of Big Fit Girl, sorry, your brand is Big Fit Girl, how do you define fitness? What's your working definition of fitness?
Well, I think when somebody can enjoy all aspects of their lives and the activities that they want to do, like, for example, if somebody wants to go for a hike with some friends, but they don't have the physical capacity to do that, that's actually taking away from their enjoyment in life. And so when your body weight or your physical fitness is taking away from the things that you want and have goals and aspirations to do in your life, then it's something that you need to look at. So I really think fitness is defined differently by all different kinds of people. I mean, if you were to ask a, elite Ironman person what their definition of fitness is, it's going to be quite different. A lot of people I work with are simply trying to, be mobile and do the things in their life that they want to do in the body that they have. So,
and go ahead.
I think there's a really big range.
And I think that's an important thing to consider is the fact that, we can still be active. We can still get out and enjoy our favorite activities. And my tagline, one of the taglines I use for the podcast and for some of the blogging I do is that fitness is having the ability to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And if you look up, and I've looked up different definitions of fitness, and in none of the definitions, Louise, does it mention appearance. It always talks about ability, work capacity, and the ability to, just to perform at a certain level. So when you kind of share this with people, what's their reaction when they kind of hear you talk about what fitness is? How do they respond?
Well, it depends who I'm speaking to, but often I'm hit with, well, it's not healthy. Like, certain size is not healthy. The thing is that I think we need to really identify that not all bodies can squeeze into their BMI. So first of all, I'm not a huge believer in using a BMI metric. I just feel that, when I look at the BMI that I'm supposed to be, I seriously don't think I've been that since I was 13. And so, I've had decades of trying to whittle down into that BMI. There are some bodies that just are not able to weigh what they quote unquote should. And so I get hit a lot with, well, that's not healthy. So I'll tell you what's not healthy is trying to whittle your body down for, 10 plus years and feeling like a bloody failure over and over and again until I really started to embrace the body that I had and started to focus on athletic performance. That's when I became the healthiest I've ever been.
Well, and let's talk about that for a second, Louise, because, I've been doing fitness for a long time. And originally I was a personal trainer in Washington, D.C., and a lot of my clients were, were busy professionals that, they did work in politics, and they looked at fitness for health. They understood they needed to exercise to improve their health, and it wasn't really, fitness really, yes, appearance was, it's not that it wasn't important, but a lot of my clients put their health and their ability and their function, their functional capacity ahead of pure appearance. And now I live in Southern California, and let's just say it's on the opposite end of the scale. And I've seen that where, you have in some parts of, the world, people, kind of recognize that fitness is about being healthy, just go out and be active. Whereas other parts of the world, and I'd say Southern California, South Florida, Miami, the southern part of Manhattan, fitness is all about appearance. So when you share this in terms of work capacity, or ask a different question. How freeing was it for you to kind of get away from that? I mean, because I'm sure, we've all done that. I've done that, need to be a certain size. You have this, these media images thrust upon us that we need to have a certain appearance. And once you started working on performance, how freeing was that? Talk a little bit about that in terms of how that changed your outlook.
Well, it was completely freeing, like nothing I've ever experienced before in my life, because to constantly and chronically be tracking every bite and output and measuring every little thing that goes in or out was completely consuming. And the thing is that my body would not get to the size that I needed it to get to, or that I thought that it should, that people at diet companies were telling me that it had to be in order to be successful. So I think what happened was, when I kind of released that from my life, I redefined what success was, because if you're constantly living in a model of failure, it's so taxing on every area of your life.
And that's, it's funny because, again, this is our first time talking, but for the last, maybe the last 6 months, I've been kind of in this mindset, and I wrote an article on this for 24 Hour Fitness about, do we really need goals? My argument, Louise, and I think you might agree with this, is that, what about making your goal enjoying the process of being active? I'm not even going to say exercise, but make the goal to enjoy the process. So whatever your favorite activity is, enjoy that process. Don't worry about the outcome, because I think we set people up for failure by saying you need to. Because I think, you talk to people in a health club and they're like, well, I need to lose weight. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
I'm a 40-something guy that drives a minivan. I joked about this before we hit recording. I don't need to put half-naked selfies of myself up on social media. For me, fitness is having the ability to take care of my family and to be in good shape. So do you think, what do you think, how do you think we could change this message of fitness is supposed to be about appearance, and instead get people thinking about fitness for performance? What are some ways that we could do that?
Well, I think, again, going back to the imagery piece that we see in the way in which we market fitness, is because our industry is putting out a very strong message that this is what fitness is about. It's about the six-pack. It's about looking young, and God forbid you'd show your age, and, that you'd have cellulite or any of those totally natural human states. We are putting out a message that is very strict. And so when people think about fitness, they think that that's what it's about. And, I'm trying to coach women to talking exactly the same talk that you're talking about, is like letting go of that, letting go about the numbers on the scale, of course, working towards performance and being, it's interesting that you say that about the goal setting too. And I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but
that's fine.
We've recently had that discussion in my coaching groups about goal setting. And I think that, when we go to fitness school, we get certifications. They talk about SMART principles and setting goals and, the specific and measurable, et cetera. And that doesn't work for so many people. It just, what I see happening with that model with the people that I'm working with is it creates angst. And it creates a lot of pressure. And then, what I am trying to do is tread very gently people into a lifestyle that we can somehow make this a sustainable part of their life. Because we know if we're moving and we're exercising, that the longevity of their life, and not only that, but independence into their older age, it increases much greater if they can participate in fitness. But the barriers, as I've said, are so high for so many people that as soon as they start getting hit with what are your SMART goals, they start to recoil and feel too much pressure. So I love what you just said about enjoying the process and enjoying the whole picture of moving your body and just starting to gain some enjoyment around that.
Well, and it's funny. Well, I appreciate that. So thank you. But it's funny because I do see, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen so many of these kind of merry-go-rounds of just, I'm going to have to lose weight, I have to lose weight, I have to lose weight. And people beat themselves up and they try to starvation diet. They do all kinds of stuff they don't need to do. And instead it's like, why not just enjoy, being you? Enjoy because I see this, I taught a class at a YMCA, and it's funny. I go in there in the morning. There's a walking group that meets about the same time I start my cycling class, and these are people of all shapes and sizes. Most of them are older, and they're there to walk in the morning. And for me, walking is a great activity, and the most important part of that of what they're doing is a social aspect. And so it's like, okay, they're being active and they're making it social, and they're using activity as a way to have these social connections. So I really think, from what I've seen, when you do that, when you say, I'm going to put these, kind of appearance goals to the side, and I'm going to enjoy the process. And if people go to the gym, and if all they do is go walk in a group and talk with somebody else for an hour, I think they're getting something out of it. I think that's going to make huge benefits, and that's where it becomes down to is how can we get people to understand that mindset. So to turn that into a question, Louise, how did you get started in fitness? What got you started down the journey of becoming a trainer?
I actually joined a Learn to Run 5K clinic to try to lose weight. I was constantly on this mission, and I remember being completely nervous that I didn't fit in, that I was going to get left in the dust. And this was about 15 years ago, and our leader stood before us and introduced herself, and she was a plus-size woman. And I literally had never seen anyone in fitness leadership that was bigger, and I'd certainly never seen anyone as a runner that was bigger. This was before Instagram and a lot of heavy social media. So I was just like so taken back by that visual imagery of this woman that I was like, wait a second. This woman is living her athletic dreams in that body, and she's not even trying to lose weight. Like, what's up with that? And so I coached with her for quite a few weeks, the whole clinic. I finished the 5K. I went on to do many more, and then 10Ks. And then I had a personal trainer who asked me if I would volunteer as a 10K run leader. And I worked in the film industry here in Vancouver, and I was a commercial agent. So basically, I represented commercial actors who were like the most beautiful people in the world with the ripped abs and 20-something Caucasian, exactly what we're talking about in the fitness industry imagery. And I would be getting this feedback from the producers saying, you need to tell her she needs to lose weight, or she needs to whiten her teeth, or all this like stuff that, and one day I was sitting there and I was like, this feels so gross. Like I'm on the weekends, I'm high on endorphins with people like you just described in that walking group that are just there thriving in their community and loving it. And then coming here on Monday morning and sitting down and giving people this awful feedback. So I decided to leave my job. And, through those running programs, I started to realize that the people that were bigger weren't always fully supported. They were often left behind, or they'd quit and they wouldn't come again. And I'd be like, well, what happened to Sally? And they'd be like, I don't know. And I thought, there's a real audience of people here that just need more support. And so I left my job as a talent agent and started Body Exchange.
That's so awesome. And I love, I've been teaching workshops for years. And one of the most powerful things that I see at a number of workshops is, almost everyone I teach, Louise, there's somebody there who got into personal training because they're inspired by somebody else, and they made a life change, whether they lost weight or just became more active, but they made that life change. They want to spread it to others. So that's interesting that you were an agent, because you saw, you saw the worst of what we're talking about. You saw the worst of the appearance-driven business, and so how's that affected your kind of overall outlook now that you've kind of gotten out of that and are now, running your own show in the fitness world?
Well, I think what being behind the scenes in commercial work is it really shows you how much we're being lied to. Like the most pristine, beautiful people are still not good enough. They're still not good enough. So that's like 1% of the population. And then what everyone does is they compare themselves to that. They think, well, why can't I be like that? Or I should be like that. Or, it really plays on people's psyche about why, and especially young people. I mean, teens and in their 20s, like that's what irks me the most, is because when I was a teen and when I was in my 20s, I wasn't onto the lie, but now I'm more savvy. I've worked behind the scenes. I see how things are presented. I see how things are not accurately presented with airbrushing. But it really made me become this trainer that wanted to not only spread a message of fitness and accessibility at all sizes, but to change the marketing message.
And it's interesting you say that, because I had this conversation with somebody else recently where I do a little bit of, I don't have nearly the experience that you do in that world, but I do some work as a technical director for photo shoots with a few different companies. You need to have somebody behind the camera who is making sure the models are doing the exercise correctly. And that's one of the things I do. And I think what's interesting, Louise, I don't think a lot of people out there realize, and for listeners, this is absolutely the truth, is that when you see those fitness models in a magazine, you see those fitness models in an ad campaign, they don't look like that year round. They're usually figure competitors or bodybuilders, and they get in shape. I had a friend who was a fitness model, and he decided he was never really, he was never really out of shape. Dude had he just had one of those genetic bodies that he was always going to be lean and relatively ripped, but he would book 4 or 5 photo shoots within a 2-week period. Then he'd spend 6 to 8 weeks getting ready for it, and it's interesting, so you talk about peeling away the veneer, and I try to get people to realize that too. I talk with, I've interviewed a number of celebrity trainers on, I use that term loosely, but I've interviewed a number of trainers who work with people, high profile individuals. And the one thing I always try to get to, Louise, is the fact that somebody who's in the limelight, in the public eye, like a celebrity, has a whole team behind them. They have a trainer, they have a nutritionist. So do you coach? Do you point that out to some of the people you work with as well?
Well, one of the things that we work on in the online coaching programs that I do is not just the fitness aspect, but the mindset. And we definitely talk about in a mindset module the way in which not just fitness, but just, women and now very much men as well are represented in a way that is just very inaccurate. And I've had people come to sessions with me and bring magazines and been like, I really like how she's defined. I want to look like that. And like you say, like, not only do they have a team, but they're a professional athlete. Like, that's what they do for a job. They're in the gym 4 to 6 hours a day, building that body and like probably haven't had any carbs in like 4 months. So it's like, it's not a realistic thing to show this to people as an aspiration. Sure, you want to get physically fit and active for sure. But to put that out there, especially again to young people, that this is how we should look is very unrealistic for so many people, and it only sets them up for failure.
Well, and that's exactly what I try to point out when I interview a trainer that works with those individuals, is the fact that if you're booking a movie, if you're a top actor or actress and you're booking a movie, you have 2 to 3 months to get in shape for that role, and that becomes your focus. And if you're getting a lot of money to do that, that's a strong. Then that's a whole different realm than people who just day in, day out, and that's why I think it's very important that we show that realistic kind of mindset. So when you got in the fitness industry, what steps did you take to kind of earn your credentials? I know Canada functions a little bit differently than the States. So what's the process of becoming a trainer in Canada?
So here you have to take a fitness theory course as a foundational course, basically just to get the basics. And then I went into group fitness. So in my case, I did group fitness. I think you can also do yoga as a group fitness, but I did the group fitness with a focus on boot camps. And then I did a weight training course, which is a prerequisite to the personal trainer course. So I did the weight training course, and then I did the more in-depth personal training course here in Canada.
And now so it's interesting because people, for listeners, I want you to realize that it's not the barrier. That there's not really a huge barrier to entry to become a fitness professional. Would you agree? I think people would be surprised at how easy it is to get into the fitness industry. Would you agree with that?
I mean, the personal trainer is a little bit more in depth, and so it should be. But the group fitness, pretty sure I did that over like 2 weekends.
Yeah, in the States, it's a little bit different. I think you guys do have a much more rigorous process than we have here in the States.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, no, you do. I mean, you do. I mean, in the States, it really is. And it's not knocking it. I mean, it's still basic information. But the way I describe it, it's like getting your driver's license. So when somebody earns a certification, it's like getting a driver's license. Just because you have a driver's license doesn't mean you should be driving a Ferrari 308. It might be too much car for you to handle. So when somebody earns a certification, that's just kind of the beginning of it. And so that's the beginning of your journey into becoming an educator. So how have you, I mean, what do you do? How do you get your education, or what do you do to kind of, learn more about how the body functions? And do you do anything specifically, like any specific work on understanding how bigger bodies respond to exercise?
Well, I read a lot of the research papers that you discussed, and I often get contacted by people that are doing research. So I've been able to have the opportunity to work directly with researchers, which is kind of nice. But also just so much knowledge gained in the hands-on experience over 10 years of really, and there's a theme that's going on, various themes to be honest. But when you're working with a certain demographic that you just become so dialed into, there's some things that I've had to learn while they were in play that I now know that I don't do with those with clients anymore. So, it's definitely a learning experience. Like, just for example, typically heavier people don't want to be doing any exercises on their knees, for example, or, the getting up and down process, you want to limit that. That's not the same for every person I work with, but it's definitely, there's a whole list of things that I learned through the process of training, like over 1,000 people now that are bigger. The do's and don'ts. And I mean, you can't really get that from a certification.
No, there's a lot of stuff that you can't get from a certification. I think that's a very good insight. And to be honest, I really think that's one of the things that demotivates people when that demotivates people from exercise is when they show up to take a class and they have some young 20-something there saying, all right, do burpees, do push-ups, do whatever. Yeah. I mean, how important do you think it is to find instructors and to find fitness leaders? And I like the way you describe that. How important do you think it is to find fitness leaders that people can relate to?
I think it's essential. But the thing is that I want to also recognize that, different trainers go into the fitness industry for different reasons, and working with the demographic that I work with isn't for everyone. I've hired trainers that they're like, this isn't for me. So I think it's, within the fitness industry, we can all find our niche. But I think what happens, because I've talked about the high barriers for people to enter fitness, once they've built the courage to actually do it, and then they arrive at a class and have a really bad fitness experience, it honestly, and I've heard these stories so many times, it can take years for that person to approach it again.
And I've heard those stories too, and that's always, it's always a horror show. You're sitting next to somebody on a plane. I had somebody, a couple months ago tell me about it, a bad experience his wife had with a personal trainer. And it's like, I feel awful. But then again, I take a step back and think, everybody, you can have a bad experience with a doctor, you can have a bad experience with an attorney. So it's a matter of just trying to, to police ourselves. But I think you're right. It can really, really turn people off from fitness and kind of take them away from that. Now, to shift gears real quick, how'd you get started posting on Instagram? What was it that got you, because to me, it seems like social media is like the absolute perfect tool for people in our business. But how'd you get started on that? And how have you built your, what have you done to kind of build your reputation up or to build your presence up on that platform?
I started posting, I don't even know when, maybe 3 years ago. I don't even know when Instagram started. And unlike Facebook, it's very image heavy, where you can really just show, like, because I'm so mission orientated on changing the imagery of our fitness industry and just fitness in general, is for me a great platform to do that, because I can just like do the snapshots and put them up there and really see what people respond to as well. And I think that social media as a trainer is an essential tool. And I know that it's not everyone's forte, but I highly encourage people to use it, because there's a lot of trainers out there, and I think we need to differentiate what we do and who we're for. And I think social media is a great platform to do that.
And I'm just scrolling through as you're speaking. I'm scrolling through your feed real quick, and one of the things I think is that is really appealing about it is you show yourself doing so many different activities. Do you get that feedback? I mean, I kind of asked this earlier, but do you get that feedback from people who say they're inspired by seeing what you do?
I haven't actually had that feedback that they enjoy so many different activities. I enjoy a lot of different activities. I'm primarily focused on triathlon right now. And I like that because it's 3 different activities. I get bored easily.
Yeah.
But yeah, the classes that I teach are boxing boot camps. So I also do a lot of boxing with women. I think boxing is an incredible way to train women, especially if there's knee joint issues. You can get some really good cardio from boxing. So I enjoy a real range of physical activity.
And now, have there been any posts that have surprised you with how popular they are? Like anything that kind of you put something up there and had a really strong reaction that surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, I find that the ones that get the most traction are not necessarily me doing fitness. They're more statements. I mean, this one I'm looking at right now, it just basically says big girls can be fit girls, and it has 1,200 likes on it. Like, how does that happen? It's one statement, but it's so counterculture to what we hear and see that really hits people with it resonates with them.
Well, and I think we're also in this era right now of what we've seen in the last few years. What I've noticed here is, you're getting strong as the new skinny and different variations of that. Whereas, 10 years ago, women you didn't see women in the free weight area that much. You just didn't. I mean, you would see some, but now, you see a lot more women, grabbing barbells and dumbbells. And has that surprised you by the number of women? And do you use strength training as part of your programs that you do with the people that you work with?
I absolutely use strength training in the classes that I'm running. In addition to the boxing is more of the cardio, but definitely strength training. I am doing some strength training myself, not as much as I would like to be, because I'm actually training for a half Ironman right now. So there's a lot of other training going on, but the strength training is really important to be able to finish that race.
And for people that are, for plus size people, is strength training a good option, and why?
I think it is. I think strength training for anyone is really a good option, because especially for women, as we, hit the peak of our hormone levels at around age 35, 40 years old, we start to decline in bone density. So when we're strength training, we're building bone density. I think that just feeling strong in your body makes you inevitably feel more confident. And so I think building muscle mass for women is a great way to not only take care of their body now and into aging years, but also to build a really great sense of body confidence.
And I think that's important. A friend of mine that I interviewed on the show, she wrote a blog post about having the strength to carry up one of those 7-gallon, what's that in liters? That's maybe 28 liters. I don't know, thinking of the conversion, but maybe about 28 liter, those water cooler bottles. She lived on the third floor of a walk-up apartment building, and strength training allowed her to carry up the water bottles by herself without having to wait for her boyfriend. So it can definitely be very, liberating. And it's something I've seen where I love the fact that more women are getting comfortable gripping weights and lifting. Now I'm looking on the feed here, Louise, and I see that you spoke at a TEDx. What did you talk about, and how did that happen?
My topic at TEDx was called athleticism at every size. So it was called Let's Think Again About Athleticism. So it was basically giving people a different perspective of what it could mean to be an athlete. And I think you mentioned earlier that when you look at the definition of fitness, nowhere does it say anything about appearance. And I really took a look at what the word athlete means. And when we look it up in some dictionaries, it says proficient in fitness or sport. And so, there's so many people that are proficient in fitness and sport, but I feel like our society has defined its own meaning of athleticism and kind of discounts a large number of people in our population as athletes.
And I think that's an important message. What was the response that you had? And I just found it up on YouTube. So for listeners, I'll have a link to Louise's TEDx talk in the show notes below. So definitely I'll check it out when we get offline here. But what was the reaction to it? And did that surprise you?
The reaction was, I really only got lots of positive reaction from it, from people that, once again, were very thankful that they were being included and that this perspective was being talked about, and that, that they could see themselves as athletes now.
And I think that's something that, years ago when I was a trainer, I used a model called the everyday athlete. And that's how I would train my clients. They'd ask me sometimes, why aren't we using those machines? And I'm like, I'm training you like an athlete. And they're like, well, I'm not playing a sport. And I'm like, it doesn't need to. So what's it mean to be an athlete? How would you define an athlete?
Someone who's proficient in fitness and sport. I mean, I've had people argue with me over this, and I'm not really like, I don't really need to argue about it, but of course there are different levels of athletes. There are elite athletes, there are professional athletes, and there are everyday athletes, as you say. And I think that somebody that shows up, that is committed to the process, that puts in the time, that, stays committed and focused, they're an athlete.
No, I think that's it. And they can use their body. You said earlier, be comfortable with your own body. Now, your book, Big Fit Girl, how did that come about? And what's the message that you have in there?
Well, the message is really, streamlined right across everything I do. It's about putting a book on a bookshelf in the stores that really could speak to people that they could identify with. So I would go to the bookstore and I would look at all the fitness books, and it would be like the 30-day this and the 20-day this and get ripped abs in this amount of time. And I think about the 50-year-old woman who just wants to move and get to that place in her life where she doesn't have to say no to anything. She just wants a good fitness level. I think about the woman that goes that, doesn't feel like she fits in the world of fitness culture and doesn't identify with athlete, and really show them a new perspective and that they are invited and that they can do this. And so that's what Big Fit Girl is about. It's practical advice, but it's also got a lot of people's different stories throughout it. And the book came about just because of my mission to create different messaging. And, it was an extremely long process. From beginning to end, it was a 3-year push to get that book out there, but it's out there now. It's selling in 8 countries. It's very successful. And I'm really proud of it.
That's great. And so, I'm going to link to the Amazon page below, and it's amazing. I mean, your reviews. I'm just looking at a few of the reviews here. Is you get some really amazing feedback, and I think that's such an important message, Louise. And that's why I wanted to have you on and to give you a little bit of voice, because I think when people see you on Instagram, you that's one way to motivate people. But I want to be able to use this as a platform to give you a chance to have a voice. So if you had a magic wand, if you were given control of the universe, for a day or for a time period, how would you change the fitness industry? What would you do to try to change the way we are right now?
I think I would definitely implement more education in the certification process about this demographic, and not just how to physically train them, but how to engage people. For people that are going out to start their own business, and they're interested in working with a wide variety of different people, they need to know how to reach them. And I think that's that's definitely missing. So I would definitely implement some more work in the certification process. And I would also work with, and I do speak in front of ad agencies as well. So I would work more heavily on changing our marketing message and the way that fitness culture and marketing is present presenting itself, and that we don't always use the larger body as the before picture. Like, it's not everyone's goal to try to whittle down into the after picture.
And I think that in itself is an important message. I mean, we're getting ready to next week here in San Diego, and I'll be dropping this podcast interview after that. But we're getting ready to have the Health Club Industry Conference coming on, and I'll be working the trade show with a client, and it saddens me a little bit, Louise, when I look around and a majority of the members of health clubs, a strong majority of the members of health clubs are women. But when you look at leadership in the fitness industry, it's a lot of it's men. There are only a couple companies, a handful of companies with women in the senior executive roles. Most women in senior leadership positions in health club companies are in either HR or group fitness. And so there's a definite, I think we could do a much better job as an industry of being more inclusive at the executive level, because that's where decisions are made. And I'm going to walk around the trade show, and you're going to have, the only women, not the only, but majority of the women you'll see will be models trying to sell equipment to men who do the purchasing and run the clubs. Yet it's mostly women that come to the health clubs. So I think it's a whole backwards thing. Now, as you've started Body Exchange, do you have a physical location, or do you do only online training?
My location and actual in-person training has really come down to like 6 people now. So that's not really my primary focus. It's more about, when I would travel and I would do speaking engagements, I realized with the book as well that this is, the people that are coming to my program are coming from 8 different countries. It's not a North American issue where people are having a hard time approaching fitness. It's an international issue, and I wanted to address that on a global level. So it's mostly online now, and spreading the message via writing and speaking and coaching online.
Great, and I'll have a link to your website below. Now, to wrap up here, do you have any advice for anybody who might be starting thinking about a fitness program, especially somebody who might be considered plus size? What would your words of encouragement or words of advice be for getting, to start moving?
Well, we talked about having those negative experiences when we go sometimes. And one of the things that I write about in my book is an interview process between the trainer and the client. And I think what happens is a lot of people approach fitness when they're heavy and they feel very apologetic about their current state of health. And so there's this hierarchy with the trainer. And so I really encourage people to consider hiring a trainer like you would if you were hiring someone to come clean the gutters. You are the person that's in charge. You get to ask the questions. And this goes for the fit as far as, is this the right person for you? So you don't have to go through that negative experience, but also it's for the trainer as well. Is this client somebody that you want to work with? So really having that conversation and really doing the due diligence and the research before you go in, because once that negative experience has happened, it's very difficult to get out there again.
Well, and that's terrific advice. And I am always surprised. It surprises me sometimes by a lack of questions that people don't ask. It's like, don't you want to know a little bit more about me and my education? Because you only have one body and you're trusting me with it. It always surprises me by people who don't take the time to really interview a trainer to find out what their background entails. Well, Louise, how can people, obviously you're on Instagram. What's your tag on Instagram, and how can people connect with you and interact with you online?
I'm on Instagram at Louise Green _BigFitGirl, and it's louisegreen.bigfitgirl on Facebook, and at my website, my contact info's there, louisegreen.ca.
And that's exactly how I found you. Well, Louise, I really appreciate your time. And most importantly, I appreciate the message and what you're doing to change, fitness can change the world, and you're definitely doing your part for it. So thanks for your time, and thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you so much for having me on today.
Now, before I reached out to her and we had that conversation, I really, to be 100% honest, didn't know much about Louise. As I mentioned, I got her name from a list of Instagram fitness influencers. But looking into her background and talking with her, speaking with her, and we spoke a little bit before I hit the record button, I think this is an important podcast to share with you because, like many people I've met over the years in fitness, she was inspired to change careers and get into fitness and help other people. I mean, to go from being a talent agent is a pretty, high-level job. You're doing some really interesting things. Of course, it can be very shallow, and maybe you're not really making, doing any, improving the world. You're putting beautiful people in ads and on TV or whatever. You're not really doing anything to significantly make a significant change. So when Louise made that decision to change careers and get into fitness, that was an important turning point for her ability to get out there and help other people. I'm going to read this again because I've read this before, but I think it's very important to remember that this is a definition of fitness from Oxford Dictionary. So I downloaded this a little while ago from Oxford Dictionary. Fitness is a condition of being physically fit and healthy. Fitness is the quality of being suitable to fulfill a particular role or task. And finally, fitness is defined as an organism's ability to survive and reproduce in a particular environment. So think about that definition of fitness I just read. And again, I went to Oxford, one of the leading, wordsmiths, dictionaries, that we use, that we rely upon in the English language. And nowhere does fitness talk about appearance. Nowhere does fitness in the definition talk about being a certain size or a certain shape. So when somebody like Louise comes out and is saying, hey, I'm my size, I enjoy being active, what's wrong with that? I think that's a powerful message. If you watch her TEDx talk, which I'll have down below in the show notes, you get that powerful response, you get that powerful feeling, because we've gotten so caught up, especially in the States. In the United States, and I'm realizing this podcast is going to an international audience, and Louise is from Canada. In the United States, we've always made fitness being about appearance. We've always made fitness an extrinsic thing. What do we look like? Can we lose a few pounds? You just, think about that. Every time you talk to somebody, I can lose a few pounds. Why? What's that matter? Again, I say that ironically, and one of the next couple of guests I have lining up is a relatively well-known, trainer who works with a number of movie stars. It matters if you're in a role, if you're being hired to play a role that's going to be on a big screen. That's where appearance does make a difference. But in a day-to-day life, fitness is more just about being comfortable in your own skin. Fitness is about feeling strong for the activities that you want to do on a regular basis. It's about being able to play with your kids, about being able to go for a walk. It's about being able to do a 5K. I've been thinking about that the last couple of days, as I'm putting this podcast together. Louise showing up on the first day of that 5K, that run, and that's scary. She is extremely brave. She's probably one of the bravest people I've interviewed on this podcast, to show up to a running club not knowing what to expect, whether or not she'll be accepted and be a part of it. That's powerful. I mean, that's one of the things that we do wrong in fitness, is we're not, accepting of everybody. I've said this on here before. My friend Jamie Atlas, who will be a guest before too long, my friend Jamie Atlas is a trainer based out of Denver, Colorado. And he had this great meme maybe a year and a half ago. I downloaded it and I keep it and I post it from time to time. But it's a picture of a plus-sized fellow on a treadmill. And he's working hard. You can tell he's working hard. He's sweating. He's a large individual. Making fun of a fat person at a gym is like making fun of a homeless person at a job fair. That's what the meme says. That's what the caption on the meme says. And that's a very powerful thing. Making fun of somebody at the gym based on their appearance, especially if they're a little plus size, is just astounding at how wrong and how incorrect it is. Exercise for everybody, exercise isn't about losing weight. Exercise is just feeling good, promoting health. Especially as we get a little bit older, as we get into our 40s and 50s and beyond. Exercise helps us maintain our quality of life. Exercise helps us enhance our quality of life. Now, if there's a health issue that, requires you losing a little bit of weight for health, that's a different issue. But generally, what the research has shown, I'm going to have one of those studies linked below. Generally, what the research has shown is that having to be a few pounds overweight, being a little bit bigger, and being fit doesn't have a negative health consequence. If anything, people that are a little bit overweight are living longer than people that are underweight. Think about that for a second. People who have a couple extra pounds are living longer than people who are underweight or at the right body weight. There's some data to show that, in some of the meta-analyses when they look at population statistics. Could over-exercise, overtraining be having a detrimental effect on the heart? It could, because there are ultra-endurance runners. You would think an ultra-endurance runner would be extremely healthy, but some of them are having heart attacks and heart issues. Our former governor here in California recently had a heart valve replacement. Arnold, if you're listening, that's no offense, but hey, you're considered one of the fittest individuals out there, and you're having to have parts of the machine rebuilt. So we really can't define what fitness is based on appearance alone, can we? And that's why I've wanted to have a few guests like Louise and Marie and Molly Galbraith, because I want us thinking differently, folks. I want us thinking differently about fitness being about performance, fitness being about feeling, fitness being about mindset. Being fit means you have choices for the way you live your life. Louise being fit means that she has a choice to go out and do any activity she wants to be able to do, or at least give it a go, give it a try. That's what being fitness is. Being fit gives you freedom. Being fit gives you options for how you live your life. I have nothing but a tremendous amount of respect for an individual like Louise, because she's saying bollocks to all these preset notions of what fitness is, and she's redefining what fitness is. I'm going to pick up her book, Big Fit Girl, Embrace the Body You Have, because that's a powerful message. And I'm happy to have more like her on this show, because I want us to understand that, appearance is one thing, but, being fit is a mindset. Being fit is an attitude. Being fit is about confidence. Appearance ain't part of it, folks. Thanks for tuning in this episode of All About Fitness. If you have any comments, please feel free to reach out to me, Pete@PeteMcCallFitness.com. That's Pete@PeteMcCallFitness.com. You can Twitter me at PeteMC_fitness. That's PeteMC_fitness on Twitter. And Instagram is PeteMcCall_fitness. That's PeteMcCall_fitness. As I'm recording this right now, I just got off. I've had a couple the last couple of days, I've had some of the most amazing conversations that I've had yet recording these podcasts. And I am astounded. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for tuning in. And for the guests I have coming up, wow, you're just going to be blown away. So thanks for stopping by, and I look forward to having you join me for future episodes of All About Fitness.